Welcome. Let's officially get this started. My name is Lauren Bailey. My friends call me LB. I am the founder of Factor 8, the Sales Bar and Girls Club. And every single month, we bring you sales shots. So if you haven't joined us before, this is your first time, welcome. Every single month we do this. Some are for reps, some are for leaders. They're typically 30 minutes. They're chock full of good info and actionable tips. So invite your entire team. This is your free training for the month. Next month, we are doing mastering that transition from field to virtual. Then we're going to get into coaching cultures that retain people for our leaders. And we're going to go to power prospecting in April. You can find all of these on the website, factor8.com/shots. Today, we're talking about selling in this nervous economy. Drum roll, please. Gentlemen, start your cameras. Let me introduce these fabulous men that are joining us today. Yay! Zach, Doug, and I all got to know each other a couple months ago at an ambition conference. And these two sort of like won the contest that I'm always holding in my head of the most fun and the best conversations and the smartest. Slightly misbehaved and irreverent as well, which is my lane. So thank you very much for that. I love you already. This is great. What's really great is that these are powerful men with long histories of selling, and I want their advice on selling during this nervous economy. So I'm going to ask them each to introduce themselves, and we'll talk a little bit about their perspective. Zach, would you start, please?
Sure. I'm Zach Miller. I'm the Vice President of Sales at HighSpot. We're a revenue enablement platform that helps companies get the best productivity and results out of the sales teams, helps align marketing, sales, and enablement. So I have this really fun job of getting to sell sales software to sales teams. And that's just like, there's just nothing better. That's just really pretty cool stuff. So happy to be here. Honored.
Yeah. Since we talked last year setting this up, I did a demo of your product and it's fantastic. It's really fun. So I've been in that space for 20 plus years and used a lot of bad tools. And you work primarily with what, enterprise, mid-market and up?
Yeah, so my teams work with enterprise and strategic customers, new customers, so new logo sales primarily, some cross sell, but so call it the upper end of mid market up to the largest companies in the world. Yep. My teams are selling it to. Yeah.
So folks, if that's your market, right, then you're really going to want to tune in to what Zach's got to share with us. And I love the idea, like you're selling to sales teams, sales leaders, heads of companies, probably some enablement teams, probably some marketing teams. Am I close so far?
Yeah. Yes to all the above. And, it just kind of depends on like any sale. It depends on the interaction and what the company's looking for and how they approach buying things. Right. It requires some dexterity and some, creative ability to approach deals for the reps, right?
Yeah, 100%. And you'll have two perspectives. I love this, right? Because you're selling into you, right? So you have the I'm being sold to, and I'm selling into.
There's an inception type of a deal here. It's like dream within a dream within a dream. It's like I got sales teams selling sales software to sales teams, and it's just like
it's like a mirror in a mirror.
It kind of keeps going. Unfortunately, time actually doesn't slow down as you go into it. Like it did, like it speeds up, and so like it's kind of like dog years, I think.
This is true, especially in the sales line. I get that. We're impatient creatures. Speaking of whom, Doug Landis, please introduce yourself.
What's up? First of all, Jake, LA, what's happening? I live in LA on the west side. Nice to see you. We got Juan from Monterrey, Mexico, who's on this call. Right on. I see there's some folks from Toronto, all over the place. I love the swath of amazing, interesting humans from all over the world. It's badass. Zach, of course, has the easiest job on the planet because he's a sales leader selling a sales solution to sales leaders. I mean, come on, how easy can that be?
Well, this is gonna be fun.
Fun. I said fun, not easy. I said fun, not easy.
I mean, come on, isn't it like you don't even have to like change your language?
Wait a minute. Don't you give money away? Isn't that your job?
Yeah, I do. Well, I mean, in effort to make more money. I mean, that's the goal. So for everybody, I'm a growth partner at Emergence Capital. We're an early stage B2B SaaS focused investment firm. Early stage meaning we invest in Series A and Bs, and our thesis is, we had a thesis 16 years ago that all software was going to move to the cloud. That was pretty fortunate because it's true. We were the first investors and actually the co-creators of Salesforce.com with Mark, and then we invested in Viva and Box and Salesforce and SuccessFactors and ServiceMax and Zoom and Bill.com, Doximity, you name it. It's interesting. My role is fascinating. I'm a sales professional wrapped in a marketer's body that cares more about customer success than most chief customer officers do. And I fundamentally, I'm a seller at heart. I carried a bag. My first job out of college was selling hardware, power tools and accessories to hardware stores, working for Black & Decker. That was awesome. I lived in Colorado and I covered from Canada to Mexico. Some fun stories about driving in weird places. And then I got into tech. I grew up in the Bay Area, so I moved to Oracle. I came back and I went to Oracle, and then I was at Google, and then Salesforce and Box, all in the early days. And now I'm basically like free go-to-market consulting for all of our portfolio companies. So, and as you all could probably tell, this is Gray, and Zach and I have been through a lot of these ups and downs many, many times. And what's really interesting is, as difficult as this is for all of you out there in the market trying to land new customers, expand existing customers, I'll tell you from the venture perspective, we kind of love these big corrections because it brings valuations down to kind of like normal market standards. Yeah. And it gives us the opportunity to actually really get in deep with companies. And interestingly enough, there are less people starting companies now. So the people who are starting companies now are really committed. They're all in. They're not, I've got an idea, I wrote it on the back of a napkin called shoestrings.com, and I'm going to go make $1 bazillion, which is a bunch of malarkey in our minds. So yeah, I'm excited for this conversation because
I just love that. So much perspective that you're bringing, and at least 3 personalities packed into that one body, right? Sales and marketing and customer success. I love it. That's the high energy that we love. And folks, Doug drops brilliance and then moves on. So like, it's okay if you're back there thinking about what was that nugget he just left in the snow. Hit rewind, watch it, because this is going to be a good time. So great. Thank you guys very much. My name again is LB, if we don't know each other already. And I grew up in sales and sales enablement with mid-sized companies in the tech space. I was the head of global enablement for SAP before I jumped out starting Factor 8. We specialize in frontline virtual selling skills. So if you're new to virtual, got huge virtual teams, and you've got to be making those outbound calls into businesses, we train reps, we train managers. And of course, Girls Club is my answer to why aren't there more women in this role? And you can learn more on our websites on our final page. Here we go. This is our agenda. Then I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to dig in. Double shot. We're going to start with tips at the rep level for the reps who are joining us and what's happening there. Okay. Then our second half, we're going to move into tips for leaders, not just our revenue leaders. This is an entire company prospect and endeavor. So we're going to go there too. Keep your chat open. Jump in with those questions, probably throw them in chat instead of Q&A because I'm not smart enough to manage both. I will try to take questions at the end and pepper them throughout. Let's get ready to rumble. All right, gentlemen, here we go. Question number 1, let's just start with a warm up here. Are you seeing a change in your world, right? Are we in a recession? If you Google it, Google says we're not. We'll call it a nervous economy. What do you think, Doug? Clearly, you have an opinion. Go.
Yes, I'm actually. Look, I'm not an economist. I'm not a finance guy. I don't.
You just play one on TV.
I just that'd be the last role that I play on TV. People wouldn't believe me because I've got lots of opinions, but I don't know if they're necessarily all right. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, whatever you want to call it, it's just different and it's difficult. Period. Every CFO across the board. Look, our message to all of our companies is don't run out of money. Like, ride it out. You got 12 to 18 months. You got to ride it out. You've got to figure out where you're a must-have and where you're a nice-to-have. And the reality is buying cycles are getting longer. Deals are pushing. Deals are losing the status quo more frequently than ever before. It's getting harder to build pipelines falling off. All of these things are signals that the economy is in a shitty spot. I don't care what you want to call it, a recession, difficult, nervous, it's hard. And CFOs at every company are telling their functional leaders, give me business validation as to why you want to keep a particular technology that you've already invested in and cut 20% of your people.
Okay. Don't run out of money. And for some people that means save, for some people that means spend smarter, for some people that means prove to buy or to keep. Love it. Zach, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I also am not an economist in, whether or not we have GDP growth of X% or not.
Right.
I don't know. I know there is a ton of uncertainty, right? There's a ton of uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds fear, and fear breeds indecision, right? People, the status quo bias of human psychology takes over, and people freeze and don't want to do anything. They want to keep their head down because it's just uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen. So I think there are a lot of ramifications of that, and how that kind of trickles out both into selling and managing, right, and leading. And we can talk about a lot of that today.
And that's where we're going. Yeah. So we're going to spend all of our next time talking about tips, right? Now that we know that this is the status and this is what we're all seeing, some of us sooner and faster than others, right? Is it time? Like, we're going to give 20 tips. Should people listening in the first 5 minutes trigger these immediately, or are we still in that we'll wait and see? Or is this is go time? Pull out every trick you've got. What do you tell people?
Yeah, like General George Patton in World War II, I believe, said that a good plan violently executed today is better than a perfect plan next week, right? And I think it's absolutely like, don't fall prey to the analysis paralysis. Act. Have a bias for action and a bias for massive action, I think.
So folks, if you're taking notes, category 1 is violent execution. I love it. I'm stealing it. That's just fantastic. Category 2 is talk and plan and work together to implement these. Category 3 is start working on these in case we need them in the long term. Yeah. Doug, you agree so far?
So far.
Let's do this.
I love the history lesson too there, Zach.
Let's go ahead.
Bring it.
You'll get lots of history lessons and random analogies. You can ask anybody. So I'll try to keep those at least separated a little bit for you.
A little bit? Yeah. Listen, I enjoyed the travel tips I got when we were at dinner. So I like to pepper those in too. All right, Doug, we're going to come to you first. Give me your top 3 tips for reps selling to nervous buyers.
Okay, funny enough, I actually did a keynote at Ambition's revenue kickoff right before this call, and Jared and I actually did a little fireside chat, and this is part of the conversation. The interesting thing that exists right now, sellers get comfortable selling to CFOs. They're your new buyer. I don't care who you sell to before, your CFOs are now making the decision. And if your buyer that you're talking to right now tells you, no, I got this because, I'm Zach and I'm the VP of sales and I got this, I'll handle this internally. No, it's a lie, i.e. Zach doesn't really know. And the reality is my job is to help Zach understand that, look, in the last 52 conversations I've had just this week, guess what? CFO got involved in the conversation. So my hunch is it's likely going to need to get involved in our conversation right now. So get really comfortable. Not a lot of people sell to CFOs and really truly understand how to do that, but they're going to get involved. So you got to get comfortable with that. I would also say procurement's going to get even more involved if they have not already gotten involved. So 2 new personas are really bubbling up that we need to sell to and understand. Number 2, pipeline is going to be really, really difficult. And if I'm a sales leader, I'm gonna evaluate your pipeline with more scrutiny now, because my question that I will always have is like, is this real? Because in economic challenging times, pipeline's harder to come by, and as reps, we don't want to look like we're not doing our job, or we're not going to hit our number, and so we overinflate our pipeline with things that are not really good fits. And in order as a rep, to be honest, what my suggestion is just get super transparent. Look, there's a greater than 50% chance that this deal is going to end, our conversation is going to end up in you sticking with what you're currently doing because your risk tolerance is actually changed dramatically. And I get that. I totally understand that. What I would love to do is make sure we have a conversation, because my job is to help you actually make a decision. I would love to have a conversation with you about the implications of sticking with what you're currently doing. And also recognizing, like, what does a business case actually look like that I know you're likely going to have to go share with your CFO and your CEO.
I love that.
So the narrative is different.
Yeah. And you know, when you first started talking about this, I thought you meant be transparent with your sales leader, because they're going to scour your pipeline and ask if it's real, which is not untrue.
That
right?
too. That is
true.
That's true.
They're there to help you. They're not there to prosecute you. They're there to help you.
Because half of what's in there is BS, not because you don't know it, but because they're getting nervous and they're not telling you, or they don't know yet because you're not talking to purchasing and the CFO. So can we just mini brainstorm? Stay here for 30 seconds. Let's mini brainstorm 2 or 3 ways to bring up that conversation. Okay. So you're talking with your decision maker and it's time to get transparent. So I'll throw out the first one. Hey, let's talk about this purchase in light of today's economy. What are you seeing in your company? How else could we ask it and bring it up?
So, I mean, I think it's important to bring up your experience that you've had previously with others just like you. So if I'm talking to Zach, and then my next call is with ULB, I'm like, listen, I was just on a call with Zach, and one of the things that he shared with me is he's got to get approval now from his CFO in every conversation that he's having. If there's something that even remotely smells like an investment that he wants to make, it's like he's now changed his process to get his leadership involved a lot early in the conversation. My hunch is, LB, that you're likely going to be in a pretty similar situation.
Tell me about
that. And I've heard, and by the way, Zach's not the first person that I've heard that this is the new process.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do is brainstorm with you about how you think your process is different.
And how I can help you early on, right, to build the case for this.
Totally.
Yeah, really good.
Right.
All right, Zach, drop some wisdom bombs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I've got the specific question for you, but I think what this is alluding to is that you have to get really comfortable with selling the process, right? You're selling the fact that we're going to have some conversations, and these conversations are not going to be a heavy lift. They're, we can, do these over a couple of weeks, and I'm going to give you something that helps validate this to whoever else you need to help validate it for, or bring those people, and we can have those conversations together. And at the end of the day, I know that there's a better chance that you're not going to do anything. And I'm a big kid. I can take that. That's totally cool. Right.
Yep.
But so you're selling this process of sort of, again, this is sort of early stage. This isn't late stage trying to get a deal across. Like, this is early stage. You're selling a process of sort of a preliminary soft evaluation. Hey, you're just trying to get this scared little, animal out of the woods to just interact with you a little bit. Like, you're not scaring them away. You're not selling the thing. You're selling the process to evaluate the thing. And that is I think a really important thing that I learned this years and years and years ago. I started selling in very difficult economies, and that was like the only way you could get people to even talk to you, because like they're not saying, oh yeah, come talk to me. I've got some budget I want to spend. I'm curious what you got to sell.
Right. It lowers the defensiveness of people feeling they're going to be sold at, and it invites some authenticity, right? From you just saying straight up, listen, there's a 50-50 shot. This isn't going to work out. I get this. Let's talk about it.
Now the reality is, though, that this isn't easy, right? This isn't easy. And to be able to carry that off effectively, you have to have a mindset control, for yourself, right? Like, it's really easy. Like when things are uncertain, it's easy to yourself be scared and yourself be like worried about the uncertainty, and to get quota breath, right? And to get
quota breath is fantastic. Suzanne on my team says pitch slap. You just come right in and pitch slap,
right? Like, I think show up, throw up, whatever, but like to have that sort of easy, empathetic mindset of putting yourself in that individual's shoes, and a random sports analogy coming, right?
Here it is.
Here we go.
To swing easy, right? Don't swing too hard. Just like swing easy, let the club do the work, right?
Zach,
and to have that sort of energy is really critical when you're trying to carry this.
Well, it parlays a certain confidence too, doesn't it? And that's important. And we need to project that confidence. All right, we're going
And
to
if you
pause
don't
for a
feel it,
couple
fake it
questions.
till you make it. Like you
Obviously.
literally just
Yeah,
have to be an
yeah.
actor. And
Yeah,
that's
Right?
hey, LB, I want to address something that Michael brought up, which is,
Perfect.
look,
I was just going
when
there. Hit it.
when you're having a conversation, look, here's the thing, Michael, that you may not know or understand about me, but I don't believe in discovery. I think discovery is bullshit. I think it's 99% focused on the seller and not the buyer. As buyers of software and technology, all three of us are. I want you to come to a conversation with me. You'll notice I use conversation and not discovery. Discovery drives the wrong behaviors. LB and Zach know about this. I have a whole thesis on this, but I want you to come to conversation with a point of view and a perspective about my world, what's going on in my industry and my company and me as a persona. Why would I ever potentially want to change from what I'm currently doing? And oh, by the way, since you have conversations with people like me all day, every day, you should actually have a point of view that might be pretty close to what my reality is. What you do in that sense by coming to the conversation with at least demonstrating that you've done some level of homework is you're demonstrating empathy, which we all want and understand. We want to be heard. And you're making my job easier as a buyer. When you come to me with a whole slew of questions, you're putting the responsibility on me to tell you what you want to hear. And the truth is, I'm likely going to do that because I want to get off the damn call because you're wasting my time. And so, like, if you show up with a point of view and a perspective, it actually, and part of that point of view was to be like, look, LB, at the end of our conversations, there's a greater than 50% chance you're gonna continue sticking with what you're doing, and that's okay. I just want to make sure you're consciously aware of the fact that you're making that decision.
Yeah.
And together, you and I are going to go through this process together. So it's a combination of Zach's process component and just recognizing the fact that A, we're having conversations, and B, you do the work as a seller and don't put all the work and the responsibility on me as a buyer.
So even if you were to enact Doug's previous tip of, listen, here's what I'm hearing out there from people right now, whether that's here's what I'm hearing out there from people right now about the value that they need, the reason they're looking for the solution, the challenges they're having, or the economy, you're already you're checking Doug's box of please don't get into a call and survey me with your top 20 discovery needs. Have a point of view and be informed. And it's critical part of any good sales process. So,
but there's a little caveat to that though. You got to be really careful, because if I were to reach out to Zach and call Zach and I'm like, so Zach, as a VP of sales, I know that you're likely that you're struggling with pipeline visibility and you know what I just said? I said I know what your world is like. And that immediately puts Zach on the defensive. And he's like, dude, shut the hell up. You don't know anything.
Go back to
shit, right?
It
totally does. And
so how do you say it instead?
Careful. So use words like, I have a hunch. I have a hypothesis. I wanted to run by you. And
heard from others.
And I've heard from others. And your world might be similar. My hunch, Zach, is your world might be similar to LB, who I was just talking to you earlier this morning.
Yeah.
I presume you might be struggling with. I presume you might be looking for.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the truth is, guess what?
Might be saying.
And you may be wrong, but that's okay because you're showing effort.
Yeah.
And now we're in a conversation because I'm like, you know what, Zach, truthfully, we're actually kind of killing it, to be honest. We made a pivot. We focus on selling into insurance and healthcare, and they're crushing it right now. Yeah. And to be honest, I totally hear what you're saying, but we're actually not in that situation.
Okay.
Right.
Would it be fair for me to say that important decision makers with above average egos don't mind correcting people? Like I used to have a rep who could break into Fortune 500 accounts, and he would do it by calling in and making a dumbass assumption. His whole goal was to get interrupted and corrected because now they're talking. And I feel some of that here as well. So something to you.
Yeah, I would take it just a step further though. Like you need to have a perspective and opinion, but I think you also have to let them know that if this is accurate, I also have a recommendation. Are risk averse. They're status quo buys. They want to be handheld through things, right? So you have to have a recommendation of what you want them to do that you're willing to share. It's not, hey, I know this thing. What would you like to do next?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It's, hey, I know that you're probably dealing with this. I suggest you do this.
Can we be really clear? That's not in your email or your LinkedIn message either.
This is conversation. Like, this is in
a conversation. Exactly. Stop selling at me. You know how many I get these days? hey, because you're a successful coach, I know that you need help with. I'm like, that's not even my job. That's not what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when people send that kind of email, I'm like, I write back, you don't know, send.
Okay, so we started with a couple of Doug's top tips. Let's back it all the way up, right? From scratch. Zach, hit us with a couple of your own top tips. What are you teaching your people right now?
So number one, I may have already said this, but mindset is everything, right? Mindset is everything. Control what you can control. You can't control everything, and you got to know the difference between what you can and what you can't. And the first thing you got to control is your mindset, right? I think you have to go back to the fundamentals of selling. Like everybody's been selling in a really frothy economy for much longer than is normal, right? It's much
not
longer
real sales, is it?
And
like,
it's an
time to
economy
actually
where,
get
like,
your sales skills out.
yeah, like if you just like, okay, another sports analogy. If we were playing basketball and we were all playing on a 7-foot rim, we'd all be slam dunking all over each other. It'd be all fun and games.
Maybe not Doug,
Right?
actually.
That's not the fundamentals.
Not
No,
sure.
it's not.
Yeah,
I'm
what
not.
wins basketball games is when teams in tough situations hit their free throws in this fourth quarter.
Totally.
Right? Unsexy, not sexy stuff, right? Hitting free throws. And in order to hit your free throws, like, you have to practice a lot. Like, you have to be good at what you're doing. You have to care about it, right? Mm-hmm. And so you go back to the fundamentals. And so in preparation, I just pulled out like what's on my bookshelf, like sitting right next to me, right? So I got like Jolt Effect. I got oldie but goodie, like strategic selling, right? Challenger,
OG, baby.
Go back to Skip Miller, like literally get better at your craft, get better at the fundamentals of what you do. And that, I think that's important.
Both of these, by the way, huge tips for leaders in case, right? If somebody has to drop and isn't going to hit the leader on the second half, working with your team on the mindset and constantly skill building, not just coaching, not just going out and reading a book. Right. I'm here to tell you there's a difference between that and actual training. Training is where you're practicing, you're role playing, you're giving feedback, right? You're learning and trying new skills. Thank you for the interruption. Point 3, Zach.
No, well, that kind of gets to an ownership mindset too, right? Like owning your own outcomes. Like if you're a leader, yes, you should be training. If you're a rep, don't wait around for your leader who maybe isn't a great coach or isn't into this to train you. Right? There's lots of good stuff out there. If you need to go hit it, find the people who know what you want to know and go get that knowledge and those skills and that information. There's free webinars like this all over the place. Go get them. Don't make any excuses to your own success. The last being, and this kind of goes back to the planning stuff, is like, in this sort of a world, it's really, really, really critical to create a business plan for yourself, right? And you kind of work. This is old school. Like, everybody's gonna laugh at this. Like, but start with your number, then divide that by your close rate. That's how many deals you got to pitch, right? And divide that by your conversion rate. That's how many first conversations and processes you got to start, right, to get the pipeline. And
but we got to change the numbers.
And then from there, that's the convert. Like, that's how many, literally down to how many calls you have to make, or whatever the top of your process is. And so if you do that,
you can't use the same math.
No, exactly. That's what you have to take a really, really conservative. Like, you have to go in and, like, whatever you've done over the last couple of years, and that you need to, like, take a very conservative. Like, you're gonna sell smaller deals. It's gonna take you longer to sell them, right? You're probably gonna win less of them. More of them are gonna just evaporate, right? And so, like, less of the first conversations are gonna become pipeline deals. And so you have to plan that. And what happens is, if you take a conservative approach to that, like you kind of have to, you're going to find that at each sort of multiplication point in that plan, geez, I got to make a ton more calls at the top to get the same amount of conversations. I got to have a ton more conversations to get the same amount of pitch deals. I got to have a ton more pitch deals to get the same amount of output, because just the way the math works. And what you're going to find is that you're going to have a lot more work to do. And that's okay. Hard work is okay. That's actually a good thing, right? And but what happens is, you have to be, like, really, really, really brutal with time management and prioritization, like back to basics of like literally putting shit on your calendar so people don't schedule bullshit internal meetings over it.
Block your call time.
And being like know that you have the right to do that. Like that's sort of a fundamental God-given right. Like you control your own time. Right?
Beautiful.
And don't cede that to other people. Like that is, especially as a sales rep working for another company, right? Like if you're self-employed, this is different. Self-employed is kind of salesperson and company all at the same time. So it's a little bit different. But if you're a salesperson working for another company, the one resource that you have to build your business is your time. That's it.
You own that.
That's the one that you have to contribute. Everything else is at somebody else's control. You own your own time. So if you vigorously execute that plan, I'll say vigorous instead of violent. Violent sounds violent, but
There's a time and a place.
Vigorously execute that plan, prioritizing, you're going to be fine. Right? You're going to be fine. And this
wouldn't you love to hear this?
Control and just feeling like you're going to come out the other end of this. Okay.
So here's something that you'd love to hear then, Zach, as a sales leader, right? Hey, Zach, can we reschedule that meeting? Because of today's economy, I know that I'm going to have to make about 40% more calls than a typical day. And I've been blocking out my calendar from 7:30 to 9:30 to bang those out. Could we schedule meetings in the afternoon? Like you're probably not going to fire.
I have no idea. Like my heart would melt. I might start crying. Right? I might start actually crying if somebody said that to me. All right. Now,
you're like Zach Miller's heart.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yes, that's fine. Like, and you know what? For an individual who is prioritizing their time like that, I will make time. Like, sweet. Let's meet at 5. I'll get my ass out of bed. Let's meet at 5:30 in the morning. Like, hey, I'm free right after dinner at 7:30. Let's whenever you need from me, whatever you need. Like, I'm at your disposal if you're somebody who's willing to really prioritize like that. Man, that would be the time. Yep, but don't tell me that and then go play golf. Like that might piss me off. But it's going to piss you off. That's true,
right? True. I'm looking at some of the notes I took when we had this conversation before break. Right? You were talking about returning to sales basics and that we can't do order taking anymore. Yep. We've got to be better at selling the value, knowing that dollars are going to be part of our conversation. Mm-hmm. So earlier somebody had chatted, how do I get people to talk to me? Well, one of the things we're always teaching at Factor 8 is you can't just touch base. You've got to be calling with some value, even in your voicemail, even in your intro. You want to call back. Let's not be pumping up the value of, making your life easier. Now's the time to find ways that your product or solution are saving money, making money, protecting investments, paying off, better ROI. Go back and tune up your value statements and lead with those. You guys have anything to add to that?
I mean, yeah, it goes back to the CFO, right? I mean, go ahead.
No, Zach, you're totally right. It does go back to the CFO, but be very careful. CFOs don't buy games. Most buyers don't buy the promised land that you're trying to paint this picture of how great your world is going to be. You know what they buy? They buy loss aversion, cost aversion. The risk aversion. I buy, I'm trying to get away from loss and suffering, cost, loss, and suffering. And so be mindful.
It's more motivating.
Of course it is. It's actually what creates urgency. It's like, if you tell me how much it's costing me every single day by sticking with what I'm currently doing, and you can prove it. Well, that's very different than look how amazing, how fast your reps are going to be at finding information, how much more productivity you're going to drive in the organization, how much more, free time. Like, what is it like? How do I capture what that is? Like that? Yeah. Great. My reps are going to spend more time on Snapchat. Well,
so the fail answer, the low answer is buy from me. I'm cool and nice, right? The better answer is buy from me because we're going to make you or save you money, right? Yeah. But the A+ answer, especially with your CFOs, are if you don't buy from me, you'll be losing money, right? There is a risk here.
There's real risk.
Swift 6. So what's in it for them? And there's 6 things that business people value. And the 2 we're talking about here is money, right? But even more, risk aversion. That's who we're talking to at those higher levels. That's fantastic. Thanks for that.
Totally. Yeah, it was fun. We had our CFO come in and talk to our whole sales team about how he thinks.
Leaders steal that.
Yeah, steal that. Do
Yeah,
it. Please
100%.
do it. Please, everybody do that tomorrow. And I promise you, if your CFO's worth a grain of salt, like they will jump at that chance, right? And he says, if I actually got the ROI of all of the things that people have told me I was going to get over the year, we'd be a multi-billion-dollar revenue company by now.
Right.
So be really
So true.
careful about that, right? You want to, credibility matters, right?
Yeah.
But so that's just maybe a side note. But to Doug's point, like I can't remember where this analogy came from, so I'm stealing it. This is not mine. Credit. I'd like to give credit where credit's due, but I don't know where it's due. But vitamins versus Advil, right? Like I've got a cabinet full of multivitamins. I don't know if I could tell you last time I took one. I know they're good for me. I know they'll probably improve my health. I know they probably, I don't know, maybe they grow my hair back. I guess if they did, I would probably take that. But guess what? I actually had my back's bugging me today, and I know exactly where the Advil is, and I go to take the Advil, right? And I think that like you said, people will run towards relief of pain and anxiety. Yeah. They will stroll leisurely towards improvement. And I think it's just critical to take that into account right now.
I think it's brilliant. Okay, I've got two more I want to follow up on here. Doug, I'm going to come to you. You said something, I'm going to read it because I might screw it up. Consumption versus seat pricing. Seat pricing hurts in a recession. Consumption feels less damaging. Lower your barrier to entry. Talk about that, please.
Well, I mean,
in his head he's going, did I say?
Yeah. I know, but it's true. I mean, look, I'm not going to say switch your pricing model over your distribution model over from licenses to consumption, because that doesn't necessarily meet everyone's kind of business models. But I will say, like, in a recession, when there are layoffs, there's contraction of the number of licenses that I actually get to sell to you, because you just don't have as many potential users or people using the solution. In a consumption model, the value is much more immediate. It's like, if I'm getting value from you, I'm consuming more. And whereas in the license model, the value proposition or value realization happens over a long period of time after you evaluate the usage across all of your user base, and you do a comparison by cohort, et cetera. So it's a more difficult conversation. Consumption based feels, as from a licensing perspective, feels like it's more apropos and appropriate for me as a buyer. And it's a lot easier for me to actually talk to my CFO about, because we're going to put some parameters in terms of how much usage we think we're going to get. But the license model feels it's just harder to navigate in economic nervous times.
Can I layer on that just a little bit?
Of course you can.
So I think that's correct. And for a lot of salespeople on the call, obviously they probably don't have the ability to change that per se. But the point is really, really, really salient, which is de-risk. It's like the most important thing you can do is de-risk a deal. Yeah. Like
totally.
Mitigate downside risk for people right now, and you're going to help them win. And there's consumption is a
one way to do it.
A big picture, like company level strategy way to do that. And hopefully, again, like lots of companies are doing that. At the rep level, like what can you do to mitigate risk? Can you do a free POC, a free trial or POC or something that, and certainly, like, you don't just want to, this is 3 years ago, 5 years ago, you just give them a POC, they get in there, they love it, they're just going to do it. Like, no, it's like, I'm going to give you a free trial and POC, and we're going to have some very specific success criteria that we're trying to measure, right? Here's my hypothesis. If we're able to do these things, the logical outcome is this, reduction of cost or whatever the thing is. Now let's do a POC to prove that that's the case.
And we'll be talking
that's going to mitigate the risk, right?
Yeah, we'll be connected throughout. You're not just going to go and not log in for a month and then not buy.
Right.
Well, right. And then there at the end of the day, you now have the right to ask. Have I earned it? I feel like I've earned the right to ask for the business.
Done. Okay, so let's talk about other ways to mitigate risk.
That's professional selling, by the way.
So a very, very tightly knit and communicated POC, consumption model. What about out clauses, cancellation clauses, shorter contract terms,
Yeah, those are, I mean,
money
those are
back
all great.
guarantees.
Mhm.
Any of these bad ideas so far? Any others you can add to the list?
Well, here's the thing. I think a lot of times, you know, companies will ask for out clauses. They will ask for things, and there's a little bit of a counterintuitive ness to this. Like if I've got an out clause, I may not put all the skin in the game to actually make the thing work, right? So I think what you really want to try to mitigate is the risk of the project failing, of the thing failing, right? And so sometimes doing the things that feel like they're mitigating financial risk, right? The downside financial risk actually increase the likelihood of the project failing and getting just wasting the whole thing, right?
Interesting.
So, you know, we talk about like, you can't really solve a problem for a small group of people. You have to solve a problem for an entire population of people, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're just making more work for them.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually adding things. You're adding things that are probably not going to do it. You're increasing the risk of the whole thing failing and all the money being wasted, right?
Yeah.
So let me translate that really quickly. Reps, that means you're not just staying in, if you're selling to salespeople, the sales lane. It's time to go wide and find evaluators and recommenders and uncover problems and needs in the enablement department, in the ops department, in the marketing department, right? Like, let's investigate more departments and find more problems where they need Advil. Zach, back to you.
Well, and that's gonna vary. It's gonna be a lot different based on what you're selling, right? And so I don't want to say that's necessarily true for everybody. Like if you're a PLG type of company where one individual user can get benefits from your thing, like by all means start small and grow. But if you're a platform sale, and it really takes, like for us, it takes sales, marketing, and enablement, like in a self-contained unit, kind of everybody to be in there, or else the whole thing just doesn't work. Like an analogy, like one fax machine doesn't do anything, but if we all got a fax machine, we can send each other's faxes, and all of a sudden they're valuable, right? So so it's the same sort of thing, and so you have to understand what are the risk mitigation tactics that you can take based on what it is that you're selling. Like this is where it becomes fun to be a salesperson, right? This is where we're not just out there like JoJo the idiot circus boy doing a little song and dance trying to get somebody to buy something. Like you're literally getting to think about like the MBA level shit of how do I mitigate risk for this business that I'm selling to vis-a-vis the value proposition and the approach to solving the world's problems for the company that I work for.
It's exciting. Okay,
so like this is when it's fun. This is actually when this is really interesting and fun.
Well, it's because you actually have to get back to selling. You have to get back to the fundamentals. And I think one of the things that Zach is saying is like, you can't half-ass this. We used to say when I was at Box, and by the way, Zach, you can share, you can steal this, but like at the end of the day, you don't collaborate in a silo. You know, like in order to make HighSpot super valuable, everybody needs to be using it. Right. And so it's like you're either going to be all in on this or you're not. If you're going to go half-ass, then I'm not interested in continuing our conversations. Cool, I'm out. I got other things to go do.
And that type of swagger and that confidence when everything else is uncertain is magnetic.
Yep.
Well said. Very well said. That swagger when everyone else is uncertain is magnetic. So another reason to role play. I've got to get this tip out of you, Zach, before we talk a few more things for leaders. I loved that you talked about now is the time to protect your revenue as well. It's not just about filling your pipeline, right? Imagine you finally get there at the end of the period and whoops, 3 fell out. Tips about that?
Well, I mean, we think about like there's when we talk about protecting revenue, it's like revenue less expenses equals profit, and that's what businesses are in business to do. Right. And like we said earlier, you're really not going to be super successful selling revenue growth. Right. Gee, that sounds great. Go take vitamins. Right. But if you're saying, I've got this top line that has to be protected, and if you do things to protect that, you like that line's going to go down, and the expenses like category may not change with it. And like you might be really in a lot of trouble if you don't protect the top line, right? And again, we're selling sales software, so that's why we think that's really important. But again, there are probably ways where, and really what that is, maybe theoretically for people who are selling other things that aren't sales software is how do you flip your benefit statement, right? The thing that's going to, I'm going to cure cancer. I'm going to eliminate whatever the thing is that you're doing as a company, right? All these beautiful benefits and improvements that you think people should just naturally want to do. And how do you invert those and turn them into, people buy keeping their job is what they buy.
Well, Zach, it's turning vitamins into Advil. I think your analogy is already perfect, and it can stay in the sports lane with injuries. But here's another part of this. Like, I want to go sideways on this. As a rep, protect your own revenue. Now, listen, if you're a BDR, this may not pertain to you, right? But if you're managing a book of business and you're getting people falling out the bottom, that's trouble. It's time to talk with all of your existing accounts and have that honest conversation that we talked about at the beginning, right? Doug, any flavor on that?
I mean, I'm just over here saying like, fuck, I want to go work for Zach. I mean, he's
Don't we all?
so it's true.
Don't
I
we
mean,
all?
it's fundamentals. I mean, look, at the end of the day, right now, as any business, because what happens in economics, uncertainty or nervousness, whatever you want to call it, the most important asset you have outside of your people are your customers, your existing customers. You got to make them wildly successful, and you can't afford to lose a single one. And they're going to have.
Don't just assume they're sticking. Don't assume everything's fine.
No, God, no. And by the way, even if you've got, you're looking at usage data and you're like, oh, they're, oh my God, they're logging in every day. Guess what? There's good usage and there's bad usage. Usage on its own doesn't necessarily mean that they're sticking around.
Okay.
It's like, what are they actually doing inside the product that's actually, it translates into real value for them and their business and helps them accomplish their corporate goals. That is largely, mitigating some level of risk, managing cost, and of course, trying to grow as best as they possibly can. So you have to double click into usage.
And so I like the idea of let's double click into usage and let's use that to start an informed conversation with folks. But now is the time to have the empathetic and deeper conversation. Bring up the economy, flush out economic uncertainty, flush out competition who may be trying to get in there. If you're on the sales side of it, flush out every step of that buying process and all of the people that are in there. Our sales cycle is going to lengthen. Our conversations should deepen. Go brush up on your empathetic listening skills and questioning skills. Now is not the time to use the same old discovery questions and do it like a survey. I've got one last tip from our last conversation before we rapid fire on some suggestions for leaders at a higher level. Folks, if you haven't already, sort your leads or book by the growth industries. Here are some that are pretty much doing okay in recessions, right? Insurance, finance, home maintenance, auto, healthcare, right? Get those to the top. These folks are still spending. Now is also the time to make sure that you are qualifying. Don't waste your time on muffin eaters, okay? Let's find out how serious they are before you're spending all your time with them. We had a situation in our very own pipeline of a deal that I heard in my forecast meeting. And then that very same person came to me saying, hey, are you hiring? Because I'm about to lose my job. So if you're not having the conversation, you're missing out. All right. Now, these are all things we can do at a tactical rep level, and the energy around it's fantastic. Let's talk about the leaders who are going to either join us here live or reps will be sending this to them in the recording. We've had like 20 requests for the recording in chats. Top tip for leaders during this time, and it need not even be the sales leaders, right? Was it you, Doug, who was saying, let's get customer success involved and others? Why don't you lead for us?
Well, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of customer success. I think customer success doesn't get enough love and attention, unfortunately. If we're going to be wildly successful and we're going to make sure that our customers are happy, it's interesting what's happening in the world of customer success is the conversations that they're needing to have with their customers are about kind of helping their customers build a business case to keep your solution in place. That's a different engagement. That's a different conversation that CSMs have to have with their customers. You all need to we spend a lot of time enabling our sales team, our SDRs, our pre-sales, our AEs. We don't spend near enough time enabling our CSMs and really truly helping them to understand how to have a real business conversation, how to help their customers build a business case for keeping your solution in place. You got to double down and invest there. It's so critical and so important.
In today's world, not even with a nervous economy, it's so hard to get the customer touch, right? It used to be 6 calls. It's double that. It's just the truth of the matter. If your customer success team is talking to your customers and they are not enabled on keeping the deal, talking business, capturing new contacts, qualifying the account, uncovering changes, cross-selling, upselling, they are salespeople, right? Or they should be.
Well, and here's the thing: is just like the CFO is going to be involved in every new deal now. Guess who's going to be the person who comes in and says, "Cut that thing because I don't care if you've got usage or not." Like you have to tie your success to metrics that matter to the business, right? They're not like, "Oh, we've got a great CSAT score from the people. They're happy, they love us," right? No, like if you're trying to renew business, you're trying to keep your customers happy's good, successful is critical, and successful means I can articulate the value that the business is getting such that the CFO could read it and say, "Oh yeah, like you'll have to pry this out of our cold dead hands." Right. And that means you can tie to revenue, you can tie to retention, you tie to cost savings, you can tie to all the things that you had to get rid of or that you would have to rebuy if you got rid of this thing, right? So it's critical to for the account managers or the success folks to be as focused on the CFO as the new logo sellers are.
Yep, totally agree.
It's good.
Totally agree.
I would add one more thought for leaders, for managers. And that is, all of what we've been talking about vis-a-vis the buyers, right? The uncertainty, the risk aversion, the sort of tendency and bias towards status quo, translates also directly to your salespeople, right? In a nervous economy, like they're going to freeze. They're gonna want and so you have to, in addition to having an opinion and a perspective for your buyers, leaders, you need to have an opinion, a perspective, and a suggestion for your sellers, right? You're going to handhold a little bit more, but a lot of it is not necessarily super prescriptive. Do this, then do this, and this. It's the suggestions and the recommendations on how they manage their mind, how they take ownership, like help them.
Well, and role play the swagger.
To execute.
Right. We need to role model the confidence and the swagger. I've got one more I want to add to leaders. And I know we've dropped some earlier too, like folks get involved now on payment terms or contract lengths or whatever else we can do to mitigate risk. That's on you folks. But here's another one. I've seen so many sales leaders who are working with BDR AE teams not use this as an opportunity to dial down the qualification criteria, right? Those AEs with the silver platter syndrome, like, oh, I'm sorry. They need to be in the evaluation process with a budget defined and their credit card out before I'll talk to them. That's bullshit right now. And leaders, you own that, right? It's time to have conversations. So if we're not closing the deal, at least we're building pipeline with confidence.
Absolutely. Like cast a broader net.
Bingo.
Kiss a lot of frogs right now. Now the critical thing.
A lot of muffins.
Absolutely. Like I want to have as many first conversations. I'll talk to the janitor, right? Everybody.
But get some scoop.
But then it's on the AE to be very, very choosy about who they have second and third and fourth meetings with, to your point earlier, right? So have lots of first conversations, but qualify like hell after those first conversations, right?
I love it. I want to get to a question in our Q&A here. Doug, ponder for a second, but Linda's been waiting for this one. In the Q&A, she's talking about forecasting and profit in a renewal situation, right? We've talked about CFOs in your own organization here. They're likely to care about a forecast confidence and a profit focus. So in a renewal situation, would you be showing the CFO how much they save by staying with you. So renewal situation, selling to the CFO, what's the value prop?
Renewal situation, you're selling to the CFO, what's the value prop? I mean, again, it kind of goes back to what's the business focused on?
Is it different?
I mean, no, I mean, I think, look, a CFO is going to be much more focused on the numbers and be like, okay, but if we're focused as a business, we're focused on, managing our costs right now. And so we're not necessarily doubling down in areas we thought we might. And at the end of the day, it's like, what's the business case for this? Why are we doing this? Then even the CFO is going to look at the numbers, but they still have to validate that there's a real business reason for us actually even having this conversation.
So it's not just go in with numbers. We need to be ready to have the business conversation. Pull people in to help you if you need to. Right, Zach, I bet you've got CFOs in the sale with you, your own CFO helping talk the language. Tom had the same question. Is there any sort of like one nugget that's might be a blind spot or a point of enlightenment for CFOs that you guys could share? Doug, like your assumption, hey, I assume that you are blank, or something that could make us seem like that enlightened, smart rep right from the beginning.
Well, I mean, look, CFOs right now are being pushed by their investors or their shareholders to get back to fundamentals, profitability. And so it's like, how are you going to do that? So if what you're selling doesn't help them get closer to building a profitable business, a cash flow positive, profitable business in a certain period of time, then the CFO is likely not going to really want to engage in a conversation.
But you already answered it. Use these words, folks: cash flow positive, profitable business. And it's like, meat out in front of a bull, I think, right? That's a real positive. I'm going to share one last thing here before we start closing this up. Gosh, this has been fun. And it's from a question. A BDR is saying, what about the AEs who think we can still one call close? Those AEs with silver platter syndrome, sales leaders, let's take a look at that too, please. Folks, our sales cycles will lengthen. Let's set expectations properly so that your BDR team isn't churning stuff that's getting lost, and vice versa. AEs are dying to work with folks and the BDRs aren't sending it. Let's lower the expectations and the criteria, if we will, throughout, so that there's harmony and everybody's got a fighting chance.
Can I add something here?
30 seconds.
Which is, so we got leaders, look at your incentive structure, look at your comp plans. Pipeline's going to be harder. You're going to actually force BDRs that they only get paid on booking a meeting, or a meeting shows up and you're not going to get any credit for all the other conversations you're having across the organization to gather intel and information for both your AE and the rest of the team. So rethink your incentive structure. Maybe comp your BDRs if they have a meaningful interaction with a company, and you define what meaningful interaction is, because it's not all just about booking meetings, because they're going to be harder nowadays.
I love it. Find ways to win and keep that winning culture. And that's the mindset, going back to Zach's very first tip, which is fantastic. If you're looking for more low cost training for your teams, not just because you want them to do well, vitamin, but because you can't afford to keep your salespeople on staff, right, without them making deals, then check out the Factor 8 masterclasses. These are low barrier to entry classes that are available in cohorts. This fantastic award-winning curriculum. They're up and coming. You can save $200, MC_200. Thank you so much. Here's some contact information. Find Doug on LinkedIn. Try not to, right? Because he's all over the place. This guy's fantastic. And now you know why. Zach, your tips were phenomenal. Thank you both for joining me. And I look forward to dinner and drinks again soon. That was great.
Indeed. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody. Good luck out there.